How was the movie, Ryan? How was the movie? Blake, just so you know, I found your gloves on the side here. Your gloves are right here. Your gloves. Your gloves were. I could have kept them, you know. You're welcome. See you, Ryan.
Hi friends, it's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome back to my channel. All the way back in 2013, Ryan Reynolds and Blake Reynolds, his wife, that's the name she gave to Vancouver police when she provided a statement to them about a photographer that she claimed was stalking her and making her scared, even making her cry. And Ryan and Blake were in Sudbury, Canada. It's north of Toronto, a very remote town, and they were filming Ryan's forgotten movie, Captive. And Ryan brought his wife to Sudbury to spend all of the 3 weeks of filming there with him in a Radisson hotel. And during that time, they went to the movies one day and they saw a film by Jason Bateman. Now, that video is going to be a key piece of evidence as I talk with you about what transpired only a couple years later. So, if I told you that Ryan and Blake have done this before, and that is trump up and fabricate allegations against someone they don't like, someone they feel is a threat to them, someone that they want to make go away, and they used their networks of family and police, and they used their fame, their power, their influence, and the fact that they were bringing a franchise, Deadpool, to Vancouver and promising the city of Vancouver that millions of dollars would be made in the local community of Vancouver and thousands of jobs would be available in the local community because of the filming of Deadpool. Well, the promise of all of this business to Vancouver may have been a motivator. We really don't know, but he definitely flexed his Hollywood muscle. But it was in 2015 that stories started to circulate that Ryan Reynolds was hit by a car. And the reports were really obtuse, odd. We didn't really know the details. And the outlets that were reporting on People magazine published an article titled Ryan Reynolds Hit by a Car in Vancouver, and Leslie Sloan ran to People magazine. And if you're wondering why there's so much positive press with People, it's because Leslie has an in at People, and People takes Leslie's word. And allegedly, but here's Leslie giving this scoop to People, and it said Ryan was the victim of a hit and run in Vancouver on Sunday. The actor's publicist told People that he was struck by a paparazzo who was driving a car through an underground parking garage. The driver fled the scene, Leslie Sloan said. Ryan is okay. He hails from Vancouver. He was in town to film Deadpool. His wife, Blake, was in Los Angeles over the weekend to do press for her latest film, The Age of Adeline. Reynolds joked about the accident on his Twitter account on Sunday when a reporter from CBC tweeted at him asking how he was doing after being hit by a car, sending out his phone number. And he said, "Put Beachcombers back on air and I'll call you." Now, that was a show that was once canceled on Canada, and it aired from 1972 through 1990. So Ryan kept a pretty mouth shut, right? He kept his mouth shut, and the narrative was Ryan was the victim of a vicious hit and run, and the paparazzo was so dangerous. At first, they tried to have him arrested for intimidation, a very rarely prosecuted, if ever used, criminal code in Canada. And when the Crown refused to actually use this, his eventual charges were criminal harassment, assault with a weapon, and dangerous operation of a motor vehicle. Fedyck was charged on April 12th of 2015. Now, Fedyck has sent me a copy of all of his records from this case. I've gotten police reports. I have a copy of the criminal report. I have a copy of the case. And what I found in here was pretty interesting. Ryan first reported this on April 10th when the event occurred. And the police report included some interesting statements. Like, at first, Ryan was not very sure who the man was, and he named him Rob. And then a couple hours later, he knew the exact identity of this man somehow, and he was able to give a lot more details. And then several days later, Blake provided a very detailed account about her terrorizing experience with this man that had absolutely nothing to do with this alleged hit and run. The way the story morphed and changed, I was really stunned. I was like, wait a minute. How did this happen? How did it escalate this far? So the first call came in at 6:40 p.m. on April 10th, and he was dispatched to report of a hit and a run. Reynolds called to advise he was struck by a vehicle from a member of the paparazzi. He attended and obtained a video and a statement from Reynolds, and he forwarded it to accident investigation. So the initial background was that he's a Hollywood actor who arrived in Vancouver on March 1st to film an action movie called Deadpool. He lives in the United States but grew up in Vancouver, returns frequently to work and visit family, including his mother, Tammy, and that he was staying at the Shangri-La residence located in downtown Vancouver. He chose the location as a temporary residence specifically because it offers privacy and security of a gated garage with access, restricted residents only. He revealed to the police that he had recently become the victims of extortion in the United States. When their daughter was born, someone took a photograph of them at the hospital in the hours after she was born, and that person threatened to release the image, the first image of their daughter, to the media unless Ryan Reynolds paid him $50,000. As of yet, no image has been made public. And amongst paparazzi photographers, Ryan said it's a very sought after photograph. They are accusing Richard, who they claim is someone that has a lot of tickets for driving and speeding tickets. They claim that his driving record is relevant because he hit Ryan with a car. But the first report said that Reynolds entered the secure parkade after a long day of work. He was by himself driving the vehicle he always drives to get to and from work each day. It has dark tinted black windows. Shortly after passing through the gate, he observed a white Pontiac pull out of the stall, so it was perpendicular to his car and directly in front of him. He saw the driver looking at him. Although Reynolds did not recognize the vehicle, he immediately recognized the driver. He immediately was alarmed for two reasons. First, he knew that Fedyck did not live there, and he was managed to get into the underground secured parking garage. And he felt that if Fedyck was able to get into the parkade, he would find a way to get inside to his residence where he and his wife live. That escalates quickly. As Fedyck was pulled out of the stall in front of Reynolds, Reynolds was now following Fedyck. He parked in his designated spot and then walked down towards P6 to locate Fedyck and get the license plate. Reynolds located him on P6, and upon seeing him, Fedyck drove toward him at a high rate of speed. Fedyck denies that claim, by the way. Reynolds stepped out of the way, and Fedyck continued to make his way back up through the parkade to the entrance gate. Reynolds cut through the pedestrian doorways between the levels and managed to make it up to the gate on P4 just as he was waiting to get the gate opened. He ran over to the car and positioned himself between the car and the gate. As the gate started to open, he asked Fedyck, "What are you doing here?" He did not respond, but made direct eye contact with Reynolds and smiled, and Fedyck applied the brakes only briefly before continuing to move his car forward. The contact of the car's bumper with Reynolds caused his knee to hyperextend. These are all his allegations. Fedyck denied that. And he was forced briefly onto the hood of the car. He did not stop at all. Reynolds did not fall. And as a result, he said he had some minor injuries. But that article from People said that he was fine. He believes that Fedyck's motivation was to get a photograph of his daughter, James. Ryan gave a very brief statement. The first statement that he gave the day of the arrest was quite different than the very lengthy statement he gave later to try to get a more trumped up charge against him, which is kind of wild if you think about it. But his very first statement was very brief. So when he first met with Matthew Wilson, the very first thing that he told the police officer was that the guy's name was Rob. Okay. But then later that day, he sent an email and told them that it was actually a guy named Richard Fedyck, and he knows about him. And he said Fedyck does not live in this particular building, would not possess a fob key to enter. So I approached the car and appeared to be waiting at the exit gate to open. I was in the front of his car when I asked, "What are you doing here?" He did not respond. He then drove forward and hit me with the vehicle. I landed on the hood of the car off to the side. I yelled for him to stop. However, he fled. The impact from the car caused some injury to my back and lower leg. Part of what surprised and scared me was that Richard made direct eye contact with me before hitting me. They really don't like it when people make eye contact with them. This was intentional and unnecessary. I was not acting in a threatening manner. But wanted to know why he was there, given knowledge of his history and extreme behavior. He says he's made complaints about him, that he's stalked him on other films, that he has a pattern of, being very dangerous when he drives, and he provided license plate numbers for multiple cars, which the police didn't really know how they got those. So that first statement, because it changed, the first time he said it was a guy named Rob, the second time he gave a name of Richard, and then asked, "How did you find out what his name was?" I determined this through two avenues. I was told his name was Rob years ago, and I never thought to ask if it was different. After he hit me with his car, I wanted to know his last name. I was immediately corrected by numerous employees on the film that his name was, in fact, Richard Fedyck. The second I looked him up online and was able to confirm without a doubt the man who has been stalking and harassing and following me and my family is, in fact, Richard Fedyck. And I saw numerous pictures to confirm that I identified him as though photographer on the internet. Did the Pontiac follow behind you into the secure access, or was it there when you drove in? And Reynolds told them he was there when I drove in. He seems to be after the photo of my baby. Now, Fedyck told me that at the time this was happening, just to sort of change directions here, Fedyck told me that he was covering Naomi Watts that day, who was in town filming another movie, and she was with her partner at the time, Liam, and they were driving in, and he was following her in, and he was hoping to get a photograph of her stepping out of her car. And he was on, I don't know who he was working for that day, but he definitely said he was not there for Ryan. He was there to take a photograph of Naomi Watts. And Ryan falsely believed, according to Fedyck, that he was there for Ryan. And Fedyck is adamant that he never took photographs of Ryan's children. He would never take photographs of someone's children. He made a point not to publish photos in his career of celebrities with their children. But Ryan made it about his baby. And he said, "I noticed him after I'd passed through the secondary security gates. He pulled out of a stall in order to get a good look into my car, although I didn't recognize the car." If you remember, Ryan said that his windows were tinted black, so it would probably have been hard for him to look in the car, just to remember that. I immediately recognized the driver to be the man I know as Richard Fedyck. As soon as I saw him, I was deeply concerned and extremely uneasy, and I was worried that if he had been able to gain access to the secured area, what's to stop him from gaining access to the building? I was very worried for my safety, my family's safety, and the safety of those in the building. "Was there anyone else with you?" Reynolds said, "No, I was alone." And then they said, "Well, what was your intention when you approached his car?" Reynolds said, "My intention was to inquire about the reason he might be in the building, particularly why he was in a secured area reserved for tenants of the building, of which he is not a tenant." And they said, "What part of the car hit you and where?" "His front bumper. As he accelerated the vehicle, my left knee became hyperextended. I made eye contact with Richard as I yelled for him to stop the vehicle." Isn't it interesting? He said that Richard made eye contact with him right before he hit him with a vehicle. Now, Ryan says he made eye contact with Richard. He smiled and carried on. The momentum forced me to the hood of the car until I rolled off as he made a turn. I hit the ground on my feet. Richard denies this happens. And then he said, have you seen him before? He says that he has. He sees them taking photographs from the bridge. And then he said that he arrived in Vancouver on March 1st. And he said, do you think Fedyck knows your car? He says, yes, he does. Have you ever had a conversation with him? And he said, no. Okay. So that was the initial statement. I mean, it's kind of weird to think that Ryan saw this guy in a carport, and whether or not he had a key fob or not is kind of irrelevant. But the fact that Ryan on foot followed him 6 floors down to the car. In the first statement, he said he wanted his license plate number. And then in the second statement, he said he was doing it to inquire about why he was there. And when the whole thing was happening, he didn't call the police or get security involved and let them handle it. Instead, he took it into his own hands. And then when Richard tried to remove himself after Ryan came down to his car. And the story that Richard told me about what happened when Ryan came down to the car was that Ryan was very angry. He allegedly approached the car and began hitting it and doing a full Deadpool on the car down on P6. And he said that Ryan would not get out of his way. When Ryan finally got out of his way, Richard alleged that Ryan tried to punch his driver's side window in. Again, all alleged. And there's no video of this because it happened down in a carport. So that's his story. But Ryan said that he didn't touch the car. Okay. And Ryan said that he only went down there to confront him on one story, or he went on another story. He went there to get his license plate number. So the first set of charges were this obscure thing called intimidation, and then it changed to criminal harassment, assault with a weapon, and dangerous operation of a motor vehicle. And what is even more interesting is that even though Blake wasn't there, she got involved. And even though Ryan had already given a statement, he then emailed several days later and gave an even more lengthy statement to the police, and then really hammered over to the police that he was bringing jobs into Vancouver. He was going to make the economy $37 million. But Blake's characterization of what happened and the narrative that they tried to spin to paint Richard as the stalker paparazzo that was doing things to them and following them all over the world to do their jobs, was actually debunked by evidence. So for some reason, Blake decided that she was going to get involved, and she gave and sent this long email to the police. And the email that she sent included a couple of statements that are factually just not true. So to give you an understanding, in the very beginning of this video, I showed you a video of her and her husband walking out of a movie theater, and they were walking towards a car. And on the top of the car were a pair of gloves. Richard said that those were Chanel gloves, probably $1,800, $2,000, and that he and his crew arrived at the theater after Ryan and Blake had already gotten there. They didn't see them walk into the theater, but they knew his car. And so they planned to just wait to get a photo of them walking out and see if they would talk to him. And after the movie was over. And so that video you see was Richard taking a video of them walking out of the theater into their car. Ryan pretended like he was on the phone. Blake was not agitated. She didn't speak. She got into the car. They both got into the car. He tried to point out the gloves on the top of the hood. And that's what was in. He had room to get out. There was no other cars, and Richard was on foot. Okay. So this is how she talks about her experience in Sudbury. One detail I'd like to elaborate upon is Richard Fedyck's intimidating and aggressive behavior exhibited in Sudbury, Ontario in February of 2013. My husband was shooting a film there for 3 weeks. We were staying at the Radisson Hotel in Sudbury for the duration of our stay. Richard Fedyck traveled to Sudbury and began to repeat similar patterns of stalking, intimidating, and terrorizing. I was so scared. I rarely left the premise of the hotel unless absolutely necessary. This didn't stop Mr. Fedyck on at least one occasion. He trespassed onto the hotel property. He was not a registered guest in order to obtain photos of us in the private outdoor courtyard. So what's funny is that in 2011 or 2013, Ryan admitted to police he didn't know what his name was, okay? He didn't know what Richard's name was. He called him Rob. But in 2013, she's claiming that she knows it's Richard Fedyck. She knows his name and she knows he's not a guest at that hotel, which, by the way, this area is a very small town. It was one of the only hotels available, and he was a guest. He said he stayed on the seventh floor of the hotel, and he never actually interacted with Ryan or Blake inside of the hotel. And he stayed there, I don't know, he said a couple weeks, but he left before the filming ended. Okay. So he says, upon learning this hotel staff were immediately notified and surveillance footage was viewed, indeed confirming Richard Fedyck had snuck into the hotel in order to take photos. It's my hope and belief that if the Radisson Hotel in Sudbury were contacted, that they still possess the video footage. I asked him about that, and he said there was no surveillance footage that he had snuck in because he was a guest and he was staying on the seventh floor. Once I discovered Fedyck was now entering the hotel, I was in a panic. The hotel hired an additional security guard to patrol our floor and watch our room. These details can be confirmed by the manager of Radisson Sudbury. He mentioned that there was no additional security on the site, so if there wasn't one on their floor, he didn't travel to that floor, so he wouldn't know. He was there working for a publication where he was taking photographs of the film set of a new movie. Having additional hotel security guard wasn't much consideration as I couldn't go anywhere. On the 2 occasions I did leave, I went with my husband to the local movie theater to see a film. As we arrived at the theater, Richard Fedyck was once again behind us, this time accompanied by several other men. I ran so fast from the car to the theater, I'd lost a glove. I remember they picked up the glove and taunted, "Come and get it, Blake." Fedyck had parked his car immediately in front of us, trapping our car in the parking lot. Eventually, one of the men, I can't recall if it was Fedyck himself, walked right up to our car and placed the glove on the hood of the car. Photos taken by Fedyck included below. My husband wanted to get out of and engage Fedyck, but I talked him into staying in the car with me. Eventually, he got out, grabbed the glove, returned to the car, and we maneuvered our car around Fedyck's and got ourselves out of the parking lot. He followed us all the way back to the hotel. I want to show you that video one more time.
How was the movie, Ryan? How was the movie? Blake, just so you know, I found your gloves on the side here. Your gloves are right here. Your gloves. Your gloves were. I could have kept them, you know. You're welcome. See you, Ryan.
As you can see, they left the movie theater. He was on foot. He was not in a car. There was absolutely no car trapping their car, blocking them from leaving. Ryan, in fact, pulled into and up towards Fedyck, who was standing, and Fedyck had to move out of the way. He said he was about 7 to 10 yards away, that Ryan had the ability to completely move and drive without getting close to him, and that Blake was not running. She was not speaking. She didn't say anything in the car. There's photographs of her in the car and her mouth isn't moving. But the way that she portrayed it was that they were chasing her. She was so scared that she had to run and she'd lost a glove. She didn't just lose a glove, both gloves had fallen out of her jacket pocket or something when they got there. Again, he was not at the theater when they got there. He was also with 2 other people who corroborated the story. Then she also told them that we maneuvered around us. He followed us back to the hotel. At the completion of the film, he also followed us to to Toronto. Rather than stay the week we'd planned, we left after a day because Fedyck was now outside our hotel there too. Now, Fedyck actually sent me a copy of his plane tickets, which was a part of the evidence that his team had for this case. He left a week before filming finished. When he left, took a plane from Sudbury to Toronto, had a layover for 4 hours, and then took a plane straight from Toronto to Vancouver. So he did not follow them in a car all the way back to Toronto, and he was not staying outside of their hotel. He was actually back in Vancouver when Blake made that claim. Also described him making her want to cry and racing alongside her when she was in Vancouver. And this one is even more insane. She says, the first time I remember seeing Richard Fedyck, she was in Vancouver. So this was December of 2011 when they were first starting to date. She went to Vancouver to meet Ryan's family. And she said, my husband and I were driving from our hotel in downtown Vancouver. We were headed to Tamara Reynolds' apartment, who's now my mother-in-law. He was behind us in his car, tailgating us at both low speeds and high speeds. At first, my husband thought it was someone joking around. He thought it may be a friend taking a gag too far. Eventually, it became pretty clear it wasn't anyone we knew. My husband pulled the car over, got out to approach the other driver, Richard Fedyck. Almost as soon as Ryan stepped out of the car, Richard began taking photos of him. Realizing this man was a paparazzo, my husband returned to the car. We then drove to Tamara's apartment, with Richard Fedyck tailgating us the entire way there and racing up alongside our car. Arriving, we headed up to Tammy's apartment and watched Richard Fedyck walking around the building, hiding in the trees and bushes outside. This was quite concerning to me because he appeared agitated and far too interested in us than I was comfortable with. After leaving, he continued to drive dangerously behind us. Following our car back to our hotel, he returned every day at all hours. We could see him outside the hotel from various windows in our room, in the common areas of the hotel. We felt the safest option available was to stay in the hotel for the remainder of the trip. So here's the thing. He has evidence of this, that the day that she claimed this happened, he was on a mountain and he was doing photographs with Corey Moneth, who is now passed away. He starred in Glee, and he was doing snowboarding photographs of Corey on the hill at a mountain. Corey had asked him to come take photographs of him. And then those photographs were sold to the Daily Mail. An article about Corey was published to the Daily Mail. The same day, Fedyck's competition is the one who saw Blake and Ryan at a market in Vancouver and was the one that saw them all around Vancouver. So Blake and Ryan did not just stay in their hotel. They went to outside markets. They went out to dinner. They took all kinds of they did events together throughout the entire time they were there. They weren't holed up in their hotel room. But he was not the one that did that, and he doubts that his competition did that either. But he didn't take those photos, and the photos were done by another company. And again, he was with Corey on top of a mountain. But the lengths that she went to try to paint this man like he's stalking her, trying to drive her off a road, and somehow she knows confidently this is him, but she says that Ryan got out of a car again and confronted another paparazzi. She talked about how he would be there at airports trying to stalk her. And then she also had some complaints about him on the set of Age of Adeline, which he said all of this is false too. While shooting the film Age of Adeline in Vancouver, February through April of 2014, I was almost constantly stalked and harassed by Richard Fedyck. I saw him nearly every day that I worked. He followed me everywhere, snuck in and out of the bushes, parking garages, positions himself on rooftops, any place he felt gave him a vantage point to terrorize or take photographs of us both, or both. Richard is not a paparazzi that gets into people's faces, but he does not hide in bushes, and he definitely doesn't stalk people. He's there and hired by companies like Us Weekly or Entertainment Tonight to get photos from a set. So he's doing a job, and he uses a telephoto lens so that he's not at all interacting with them. He's not approaching them. He's just getting shots for his job that he then sends to his job. And But again, she characterizes this as him terrorizing her. It's well documented in writing that I refused to do the film in Vancouver unless production hired an additional security person to take me to and from work every single day and to remain with me at work. I was so concerned about Fedyck that this point was a deal breaker in my contract. I have numerous emails regarding this topic, which can be made available upon request. Despite the fact that I had a security person with me, I was so worried about Richard and his behavior that I rarely left the apartment I'd rented. I was pregnant at the time, which was even more concerning for me because it was my belief that it was only a matter of time before Richard Fedyck caused a serious accident, harming an innocent bystander or my baby. I have numerous photos I've included below, which were taken by Fedyck at close range and sold through either his own company, Punked Images, or a third party called AKMC GSI, which brokers photos for Fedyck. As someone living and working within the entertainment industry, I'm certainly accustomed to and understanding the nature of the job. I'm well aware that my job can and does attract the presence of celebrity photographers. With that being said, never in my life have I experienced a paparazzi travel across the country in order to spend several weeks loitering, stalking, and intimidating people in this manner. I've never seen a paparazzo drive so dangerously and exploit his proximity in such careless, intimidating, and frightening ways. He says, one of the factors I found most troubling during the periods in Vancouver and all the different times was the pleasure Richard Fedyck seemed to take in the dynamic. Upon seeing him, he would often point and laugh. If we managed to drive a few blocks without being pursued, he would eventually pull alongside our car and wave. I interpreted these actions to be aggressive, gotcha type action. He terrorized me in a way which was incredibly unsettling. His driving habits have on multiple occasions, too many to count, put both myself and my family in dangerous situations. He is everywhere we are. Due to Richard Fedyck's actions, we no longer leave our home in Vancouver unless it's for work or some other unnecessary reason. This man knowingly, intentionally hit my husband with his vehicle. I feel it's important that Richard Fedyck be charged with the maximum penalties the law allows. This man seems to have boundless time and energy to devote to us, and we're willing to do anything and everything within our power to see that it stops. We don't ask or require any special treatment, just the ability to enjoy my husband's hometown of Vancouver and the rest of Canada without constant fear for our physical and emotional well-being. If you need further information, I'd be happy to gather and go into more detail. So she made all of that, right? She shared a couple photos from his company that he took for his work, right? And none of which were him in their faces. And she made very alarming claims about his driving. And in at least two of the cases, it definitely wasn't him. And he was a guest of the hotel, and he definitely didn't chase her, as you saw. He said that when he read this, it was like very confused. And if you notice, what I'm sharing with you is the statements he was given for his case that he was given to by his attorney that he was supposed to go through and see, like, did this happen? Do you remember this? And that's where he came up with all the timelines where I was on a mountain this day when she said I was here. I left a week before before they left in Sudbury. I didn't take photos of them when she was with his mother. I was with Corey. I didn't drive and follow them to Toronto on the way back. I definitely wasn't in Toronto a week after I had already been in Vancouver. And while he was doing stuff for the Age of Adeline, he never saw her. Like, she never made contact with him. She had no idea he was there. But he was there, and he did have contacts at the time calling out Ryan for constantly showing up on the set. Ryan was there anytime Blake had an intimate scene, anytime she had to kiss someone, anytime she and Michael Weissman had a scene where they had to be intimate, kiss, hug, wedding scenes, whatever. He showed up frequently. And it was not because of the paparazzi. It was because Ryan, according to him, and the people that were on the set, was not happy with the intimate scenes that Blake was part of. But as you see there, they're trying to make it like flip it like, oh, he was stalking us there and I was so scared and I didn't want to be on the set. When really it was Ryan that was constantly showing up, making things difficult for her. And it's wild to me that they can just so blatantly lie about something like that car situation where They're not being chased. There's not a car blocking them. No words came out of Ryan's voice or Blake's voice. They never said, Blake, come and get it. He just said, your gloves are there. And the only snarky thing he said is, I could have taken them. They arrived after they were at the movie. You know, I paparazzi, and it's not a job I would do, but they're doing a job. They're doing a job for the magazines and the media outlets that promote these people's movies. They're promoting them for the purpose of getting them into exposure. And what's funny is Richard said that for years, Blake's publicist was tipping off his company and wanting him to show up at areas that she was at to get photographs. So he would get a call like, she's going to be here. Can you go get photographs? Like, apparently, the very first time that she was seen with Ryan publicly and they kissed publicly, her publicist tipped him off about that. And he said that Blake's publicist tipped them off a lot. And that's how the paparazzi works. They don't just typically show up and know where someone's going to be. He says most often it's publicists being told where to go. But she's making it seem like he's terrorizing her, right? Just like Ryan, who confronts him in the carport and then chases him. I mean, can you imagine? He's in a car in P6 and Ryan chases him all the way to the gate and then stands in front of the gate and doesn't want him to leave. And he's trying to leave. He's trying to exit the situation and Ryan's trying to keep him there. If Ryan was so scared, why would he confront the man that he believed was going to terrorize him? It's very much, it sounds a lot to me like, you know, dressing down Baldoni and screaming at him for fat shaming his wife. And again, why Blake is here getting involved in this when she wasn't there is also weird. And it's weird to me that it goes from we barely even know who this guy is to suddenly it's they have this very intimate relationship with him and he's been stalking them for years. And they used this to get a restraining order against him. And you know what I think is ironic here is that the case was eventually dropped, okay? And I asked him, you know, what do you think set Ryan off? Like, why was he in such pursuit of you? And he said that early on, when Deadpool started filming, he caught a photograph of Ryan in the Deadpool like face where, you know, it's like that scarred up face. And it was before the film came out. And it was not a flattering photo of him. And he did not like the photograph of him. And he approached him and told him to remove the photo from his website. He didn't want the photo of him in the Deadpool face online. He didn't like it. Wasn't a good angle. And he was mad at him because he wouldn't remove the movie or remove that photo. He didn't like that he was taking photographs of them filming in public places. So when they were filming Deadpool, they were like filming on streets. They were filming in parks. They were filming in public areas. So anyone could be there to take photographs. And what they did was they conjured up this whole story because he put that photograph online of Ryan in that mask and then used it to drum up all of this danger so that his company could no longer take photographs on the set of Deadpool. That's really what this ultimately was about. At least that's Richard's take. The lengths that he went to try to destroy this man over a photograph is wild. And then when Ryan was the aggressor that day in the carport, he went to great lengths to paint him as the dangerous one. And he even like brought in cops to help him try to like blame this guy for doing nothing. And on November of 2017, they withdrew every single charge. He never had like full discovery in this case because they drummed it out as far as they could go before they could get to a point where they had to either go to trial or withdraw the charges. They had nothing on him, so they had to withdraw the charges. Now, I have a lot more that I could share on this. Ryan actually included a really long statement too that I didn't even get to, but I just wanted to share with you in this video that they've done this before. They have shared and made up and fabricated statements to ultimately try to destroy someone and actually get them arrested, put them in prison for terrorizing them because he took a picture. And then Ryan fabricated this idea that he, you know, was going to go take a picture of his baby. He used his baby as a shield when really Ryan was allegedly mad about that Deadpool picture. And then Rick lost so much. He lost his reputation. He lost his business. He lost his marriage. he ended up in massive amounts of debt because he had to spend money on a attorney to be his criminal attorney. He still owes money, he said, to a friend that he was given money to. He doesn't work in this field anymore. He still takes photographs, but doesn't do this kind of work anymore. He said it completely altered his view on all of it. And, he says that a lot of people don't want to listen to his story and they think that he's this dangerous guy. But he said he came out and he was triggered because of Justin Baldoni, because he said, what they put me through is what they're doing to Justin. What they're doing to Justin, I've lived through. And I didn't get to go to trial. They withdrew it. They took me right up to the edge of trial. And he said, the difference here with Baldoni is they're accusing him of all of these crimes, but Baldoni has sued back, right? He's filed claims against them. And so it won't be just like they can just drop it at the 10th hour to get out of it and try to make it all go away. They can go to court and it will all become public. And the big difference here in this case was all of these records were sealed until the case was adjudicated because Ryan used a law in Canada, abused it, in my opinion, to have it sealed and unpublished for a reason that was irrelevant. And that's what Ryan tried to do in the court in federal court, trying to make everything sealed. Well, he can't do that in the United States. Canada has different laws, but the United States, you don't get to seal court proceedings. And Ryan's trying to impose Canadian law into our system, and it's not going to work. And Rick was just horrified for Justin, feels so bad for him, knows from his own experience Justin is completely innocent, knows there's no truth to it, explained the lies that Blake made about him. I have the evidence to show that they are lies. And this is just, they've gotten away with it before. So what would stop them from doing it again, right? All he wants is so that people know, like, Justin isn't the first person they've done this to. And Justin is the first one to literally hold them accountable by suing them back. And he hopes that by coming forward himself, other people will speak out because probably countless other lives have been ruined by them. So that's his story. We know that Ryan's story was he was hit by a car. We know that the charges were dropped. There's always two sides to a story. What do you think the truth is? Do you believe Ryan's side? Do you believe Blake's side? Or do you believe Rick? Tell me in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed, and click the bell so you never miss a video. And make sure that you hang on tight, guys, because I have a lot of evidence that I still have to share from this case. All right, you guys. Bye.